They had no idea they were abandoning the woman who secretly controlled the $80 million pharmaceutical empire that funded their children's private school tuitions, their mortgage payments, and the medical research foundation that employed half of them, and whose Christmas gift would contain the legal documents that would systematically strip away every financial benefit they'd taken for granted, while discovering that the lonely old woman they left crying at an empty dinner table actually held the power to either secure their family's future or destroy their comfortable lives with a single signature on Christmas. Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and the pharmaceutical fortune my ungrateful relatives never knew I controlled, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment telling me about your worst experience with family members who took your generosity for granted during the holidays, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one about what happens when people assume elderly women are burdens to be managed and discarded, only to discover just how catastrophically wrong they can be when Christmas kindness meets corporate power that could change their lives forever or end their financial security permanently. My name is Eleanor Hartwell, I'm 73 years old, and this story begins on Christmas Eve 2023, when I made what seemed like a traditional decision to host our annual family Christmas dinner at my modest home in Brookfield, Massachusetts, a decision that would reveal my family's true character and teach them the most expensive lesson about taking elderly relatives for granted, whose quiet generosity could either continue supporting their comfortable lifestyles or disappear entirely based on how they chose to treat the woman whose pharmaceutical fortune had been secretly funding their American dreams for. But to understand how my children and grandchildren, successful professionals who thought they had built their careers through personal merit and hard work, ended up facing financial ruin and professional catastrophe within 48 hours of abandoning me at Christmas dinner, you need to know who I was before my carefully maintained image as a retired grandmother concealed one of the most influential pharmaceutical fortunes in New England, and the medical research empire that determined which breakthrough treatments reached the market and which promising careers flourished in biotechnology and medical research. For 41 years, I was Dr. Eleanor Hartwell, founder and controlling shareholder of Hartwell Biosciences, one of America's most successful pharmaceutical development companies, responsible for developing over 30 FDA-approved medications, including breakthrough treatments for diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, that have saved millions of lives worldwide while generating the kind of sustained profits that allowed me to quietly support my family's ambitions without them ever understanding the source of their financial security and professional opportunities. I wasn't just living as a retired grandmother in a modest New England home. I was the strategic architect behind pharmaceutical innovations, worth billions of dollars, and controlling the medical research relationships that determined which biotechnology companies received funding, which medical schools recruited the most promising students, and which young doctors and researchers gained access to career-making opportunities in pharmaceutical development and medical research that could establish generational wealth for families who understood the value of scientific innovation and medical. My pharmaceutical portfolio included research facilities in Boston, Cambridge, and Hartford that employed over 2,000 scientists and medical professionals, manufacturing partnerships with major drug companies that generated over $400 million annually in licensing revenues, and medical research grants that funded breakthrough studies at Harvard Medical School, Yale University, MIT, and Johns Hopkins University. My foundation provided scholarship funding for medical students, research grants for promising young scientists, and the educational. My responsibilities encompassed identifying promising medical research before other pharmaceutical companies recognized breakthrough potential, negotiating complex licensing agreements that required sophisticated understanding of FDA regulations and patent law, coordinating with medical researchers and university partners who determined which treatments received development funding, and implementing the pharmaceutical strategies that had turned modest initial investments into a medical research empire worth over $80 million across some of America's most prestigious medical institutions. But these achievements only tell part of the story about the complexity and critical importance of pharmaceutical innovation at the highest levels of medical research and drug development. When you're responsible for funding the research that creates life-saving medications, managing relationships with medical institutions that affect thousands of patients' treatment options, and supporting the career development of doctors and researchers whose work impacts global health outcomes, every decision carries enormous weight and consequences that extend far beyond individual company success to impact entire medical communities and healthcare systems throughout the world. During my first year in pharmaceutical research, 1982, I started as a biochemist at a small research lab in Cambridge, working on diabetes treatments, while most pharmaceutical companies were focused on more profitable medications that didn't require the complex long-term studies necessary for metabolic disease research, while other researchers pursued quick commercial applications and patent-focused development. I focused on understanding the fundamental biochemical processes that cause disease, building relationships with patient advocacy groups, and medical researchers who understood that breakthrough treatments required patient, methodical research that prioritized medical efficacy over short-term commercial success. That first diabetes research project taught me essential lessons about pharmaceutical development, regulatory approval processes, and the importance of treating drug development as a medical mission that served patients rather than simply generating profits for shareholders. I learned to evaluate research potential carefully, maintain studies to the highest scientific standards, and build relationships with medical researchers, regulatory agencies, and patient communities that would become the foundation for decades of successful pharmaceutical innovation and life-saving medical breakthroughs. By 1990, my research portfolio had grown to include 12 different pharmaceutical projects throughout New England, including diabetes treatments, cardiovascular medications, and cancer therapies that were being developed in partnership with major medical schools and research hospitals. Each project was carefully designed and funded conservatively, allowing me to weather the early 1990s biotechnology crash that destroyed many speculative pharmaceutical companies, while actually expanding my research funding by partnering with medical institutions that had lost commercial backing but possessed excellent scientific potential and dedicated research teams. The 1990s proved to be a decisive decade for establishing Hartwell Biosciences as a major force in pharmaceutical development. While larger drug companies focused on acquiring existing patents and maximizing profits from established medications, I specialized in funding early-stage research that served patient communities and medical researchers while generating breakthrough treatments and long-term licensing revenues. This approach allowed me to build deep relationships with medical schools, research hospitals, and patient advocacy organizations that provided early access to promising research opportunities and protected my pharmaceutical investments from commercial competition and regulatory challenges. One of my most significant early successes involved developing a breakthrough diabetes medication that emerged from research I funded at Boston University Medical School, where a team of endocrinologists had discovered a novel approach to insulin resistance that traditional pharmaceutical companies considered too risky for commercial development. The project required coordinating with diabetes patient groups, obtaining complex FDA approvals, and managing clinical trials that took 7 years and cost $40 million. But the result was a medication that transformed diabetes treatment worldwide, while generating over $2 billion in licensing revenues that funded dozens of subsequent research projects and medical breakthroughs. The diabetes medication became a model for pharmaceutical development throughout the medical research community, demonstrating that patient-focused research and methodical scientific development could work together to create breakthrough treatments, while generating excellent returns for investors who understood that medical innovation required patience, scientific expertise, and commitment to serving patient communities, rather than maximizing short-term profits through patent manipulation and marketing-driven drug development. During the 2008 financial crisis that devastated biotechnology markets and eliminated billions of dollars in pharmaceutical research funding, forcing countless medical research projects into abandonment and destroying career prospects for young doctors and scientists throughout the medical community, I coordinated protective strategies that literally saved dozens of research projects and hundreds of medical careers across our network of university partnerships and research collaborations. Working 18-hour days for 10 months straight, I restructured research funding arrangements in real time, negotiated with pharmaceutical companies and investors to prevent abandonment of promising medical research that had taken years to develop, managed emergency funding programs that kept medical researchers employed during the economic crisis when most pharmaceutical companies were cutting research budgets, and implemented financial strategies that allowed struggling medical institutions to survive while maintaining the research standards that had taken generations to establish and perfect. The most devastating aspect of my family's Christmas betrayal was that none of them understood that their comfortable professional lives, their children's educational opportunities, and their financial security had been quietly supported through my pharmaceutical fortune and medical research connections for over 20 years. The medical school scholarships that allowed my nephew David to become a cardiologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, the research grants that launched my daughter Jennifer's biotechnology career, the private school tuitions for my grandchildren, the down payment assistance for family home purchases, all of this had been funded through Hartwell Biosciences' profits and medical research success that I had deliberately kept private to avoid creating family dependency, or professional jealousy that could damage both my business relationships and family harmony. But my family had no idea that the woman they were about to abandon at Christmas dinner controlled the very medical research networks and pharmaceutical relationships that had made their careers possible, funded their children's futures, and provided the financial security they considered the natural result of their personal merit and professional competence. The modest grandmother whose Christmas celebration they would dismiss as obligation and inconvenience was actually documenting their ingratitude and family exploitation that would ultimately determine whether they continued enjoying the benefits of my pharmaceutical success, or learned what their lives would look like without the medical research fortune that had been supporting their American dreams since they were too young to understand the source of their family's remarkable educational and professional opportunities. The stage was set for a Christmas dinner that would test whether my family understood that financial support required gratitude in family relationships, or whether they would demonstrate the entitlement and exploitation that would cost them everything they thought they had earned through individual merit, while discovering that their comfortable lives had actually been built on the pharmaceutical foundation that I had created through 4 decades of medical research innovation and breakthrough drug development that served patients worldwide while providing the generational wealth that had elevated our entire family's prospects and possibilities. The Christmas gift that would change everything was already prepared and waiting under my tree. Legal documents that would either confirm their continued access to my pharmaceutical fortune and medical research legacy, or transfer those resources to medical charities and research institutions that understood the value of scientific innovation and treated breakthrough medical research with the respect and gratitude that my own family had never demonstrated during 20 years of financial support that they had never acknowledged or appreciated because they assumed their success was entirely self-made, rather than understanding that family wealth. But the most profound irony of my family's impending Christmas betrayal was that they had spent decades benefiting from what they considered their own exceptional merit and professional achievement, never understanding that their remarkable success patterns weren't coincidental, but carefully orchestrated through my pharmaceutical connections and research funding networks that had been supporting their careers, education, and financial stability since they were children. My daughter Jennifer's prestigious position as Senior Research Director at Cambridge Biotech, a $200,000 annual salary position that allowed her to purchase a $800,000 home in Newton and send her children to Phillips Academy, existed because I had quietly recommended her to the company's founders during a pharmaceutical industry conference in 2018, providing the professional endorsement that elevated her from mid-level laboratory manager to executive leadership despite her limited experience with commercial drug development and biotech management. My son Michael's successful cardiothoracic surgery practice at Boston Medical Center, generating over $500,000 annually in specialist fees and allowing him to maintain a weekend home in Cape Cod, had been established through my connections with Harvard Medical School's residency program coordinators, who ensured his acceptance into the most competitive surgical specialties based on my family's generous support for medical education advancement and research funding that had benefited the institution for over 15 years. My nephew David's rapid advancement from general practitioner to chief of cardiology at Massachusetts General Hospital, a position that typically required 20 years of specialized experience but had been achieved in just 12 years, resulted from research grants and equipment donations that I had channeled through my foundation to the hospital's cardiovascular research department, creating goodwill and professional relationships that opened doors for family members who demonstrated medical competence but lacked the extraordinary qualifications typically required for such prestigious positions. The pattern extended throughout our extended family network. My granddaughter Sarah's acceptance into MIT's bioengineering program despite mediocre SAT scores had been facilitated through my endowment contributions to the university's medical research facilities. My grandson Thomas's internship at Pfizer's research division, an opportunity that launched his pharmaceutical career and led to his current $150,000 position as clinical research coordinator, had been arranged through my professional relationships with the company's development executives who valued my expertise in FDA regulatory processes and drug approval strategies. Even the smaller financial benefits that my family considered normal aspects of middle-class professional life had been quietly supplemented through my pharmaceutical wealth. The down payment assistance that allowed Jennifer and Michael to purchase homes in expensive Boston suburbs. The private school tuitions for 6 grandchildren attending elite preparatory academies. The emergency financial support during Michael's medical school years and Jennifer's graduate studies. The family vacations to European medical conferences that provided continuing education credits while appearing to be leisure travel funded through family generosity. My pharmaceutical empire's influence extended far beyond direct family support to encompass the broader medical research ecosystem that determined career opportunities and professional advancement throughout New England's biotechnology corridor. Hartwell Biosciences maintained research partnerships with Harvard Medical School, MIT, Tufts University, Yale School of Medicine, and Boston University that generated over $50 million annually in collaborative research funding, creating the academic environment and research opportunities that allowed my family members to build impressive professional credentials through association with prestigious institutions and breakthrough medical research projects. The diabetes medication breakthrough that had established my pharmaceutical reputation and generated billions in licensing revenues had emerged from research conducted at laboratories where 3 of my family members had completed their graduate studies, gaining research experience and professional recognition that enhanced their career prospects while contributing to medical innovations that improved treatment outcomes for millions of diabetic patients worldwide. Their participation in groundbreaking medical research had provided publication opportunities, conference presentations, and professional recognition that established their credibility in competitive medical specialties, where research credentials often determined advancement opportunities and specialist positioning. My cancer research initiatives, conducted through partnerships with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and Massachusetts General Hospital, had funded the development of innovative chemotherapy protocols that reduced treatment side effects while improving patient survival rates. These research projects had provided career-making opportunities for young oncologists and medical researchers in our family network, allowing them to participate in clinical trials and research studies that established their expertise in cancer treatment and positioned them for leadership roles in oncology departments and cancer research facilities throughout the region. The cardiovascular research programs that I had funded through Brigham and Women's Hospital and Boston Children's Hospital had produced breakthrough treatments for congenital heart defects and advanced cardiac surgery techniques that saved thousands of lives while establishing the medical researchers and surgeons who participated in these programs as leaders in their respective specialties. My family members who had training opportunities in these prestigious cardiac programs gained surgical experience and research credentials that would have been impossible to obtain without the institutional relationships and research funding that my pharmaceutical success had provided to medical institutions throughout Massachusetts and Connecticut. But beyond the direct career benefits and financial support that my pharmaceutical wealth had provided to family members, what made their Christmas betrayal particularly devastating was their complete lack of awareness about the source of their professional success and the ongoing nature of their dependence on my medical research network for continued career advancement and financial stability. They had internalized their achievements as personal merit rather than understanding that their remarkable success patterns reflected the kind of systemic support and professional advocacy that required family loyalty and gratitude, rather than taking for granted the opportunities and advantages that distinguished their careers from other medical professionals who lacked similar institutional connections and research funding access. Jennifer's recent promotion to Vice President of Clinical Development at Cambridge Biotech, a position that increased her annual compensation to $350,000 and provided stock options potentially worth millions, had been facilitated through my ongoing consulting relationships with the company's board of directors and pharmaceutical development strategies. Her promotion wasn't based solely on professional competence, though she was certainly qualified, but on the institutional trust and pharmaceutical expertise that my reputation provided to biotech companies seeking strategic guidance and FDA regulatory knowledge that could determine the success or failure of expensive drug development programs. Michael's appointment to the Surgical Review Board at Boston Medical Center, a prestigious position that enhanced his professional reputation and provided influence over surgical standards and procedure approvals throughout the hospital system, had been supported through my foundation's funding for surgical equipment and training programs that demonstrated our family's commitment to advancing medical care and surgical innovation. His leadership role in hospital governance reflected not only his surgical skills, but also the institutional relationships and medical research support that my pharmaceutical success had provided to healthcare institutions that valued research partnerships and educational funding. David's selection as principal investigator for a National Institutes of Health research grant studying innovative cardiac surgery techniques, a $2.8 million research project that would establish his reputation as a leading cardiovascular researcher and provide the credentials necessary for academic medical appointments at major universities, had been influenced by my relationships with NIH review committees and federal medical research administrators who understood my expertise in pharmaceutical development and clinical research methodology that could ensure successful project completion, and the research grants, equipment donations, and educational funding that I had provided to medical institutions throughout New England had created an ecosystem of professional goodwill and institutional relationships that benefited every family member who pursued medical careers, biotechnology positions, or pharmaceutical industry employment. Medical school admissions committees recognized our family name as associated with significant research support and educational advancement. Residency program directors understood that our family members brought not only medical competence, but also connections to pharmaceutical research funding and development expertise that could enhance their program's success and research capabilities. Hospital administrators and department heads welcomed our family members as employees and colleagues who maintained relationships with pharmaceutical industry leaders and medical research funding sources that could provide competitive advantages in securing research grants, clinical trial opportunities, and equipment donations that determined which medical institutions thrived and which struggled with limited resources and outdated facilities. The institutional recognition and professional opportunities that my family members enjoyed weren't coincidental but reflected the systematic network building and strategic relationship development that had taken 4 decades to establish through consistent excellence in pharmaceutical innovation and medical research support. My quiet financial support for family members had extended beyond professional advancement to encompass the lifestyle maintenance and financial security that allowed them to focus on medical careers without economic stress or financial limitations that affected other medical professionals. The mortgage payment assistance that I had provided during the early years of their careers had allowed them to purchase homes in desirable neighborhoods near major medical centers, reducing commute time and providing stable family environments that supported career development and professional networking opportunities. The private school tuitions that I had funded for my grandchildren ensured they received educational preparation that would qualify them for admission to prestigious universities and professional programs, continuing the pattern of educational excellence and professional advancement that characterized our family's approach to medical career development. These educational investments represented not just family generosity but strategic planning for the next generation's success in medical and scientific careers that required exceptional academic preparation and research experience that distinguished successful applicants from thousands of qualified candidates competing for limited positions in competitive medical specialties. The emergency financial support that I had provided during family medical crises, educational expenses, and career transition periods had allowed my family members to make professional decisions based on optimal career development rather than immediate financial necessity. Medical residents and fellows could choose competitive specialties and extended training programs without concern about supporting families or paying off educational loans during the low-income years that characterized medical training and early career development in expensive Boston metropolitan areas where housing costs and living expenses often forced medical professionals to compromise career goals for immediate income generation. The family investment account that I had established through Hartwell Biosciences profit-sharing programs had provided each family member with financial security and investment growth that supplemented their professional incomes and created the economic foundation for long-term financial planning and retirement security. These investment benefits had allowed them to pursue medical careers for professional satisfaction rather than maximum income generation, knowing that their financial futures were secure regardless of the earning limitations that affected many medical professionals who had dedicated their careers to patient care and medical research, rather than commercial medical practice and profit maximization strategies. But the most significant aspect of my family's financial dependence on my pharmaceutical success was their complete unawareness of how extensively their comfortable lifestyles and professional opportunities relied on ongoing support and institutional relationships that could be withdrawn if they demonstrated the kind of ingratitude and family exploitation that would violate the trust and mutual respect that successful family wealth management required across generations of medical professionals and business leaders. Their assumption that their success was self-made rather than systematically supported had created dangerous complacency about family relationships and the importance of honoring elderly relatives whose life's work had created the opportunities and advantages that distinguished their careers from other medical professionals who lacked similar family resources and institutional connections. They had never questioned why their career advancement had been consistently smooth, why educational opportunities had always been available, why financial crises had always been resolved quickly, or why their professional reputations had developed so remarkably compared to colleagues with similar qualifications and experience levels. The medical research network and pharmaceutical industry relationships that I had built through Hartwell Biosciences provided not only current career support, but also ongoing opportunities for professional advancement that would continue benefiting family members throughout their careers if they maintained appropriate appreciation and family loyalty. Research collaborations could expand into consulting opportunities and industry positions that provided additional income and professional recognition. Pharmaceutical partnerships could create licensing opportunities and development projects that enhanced career credentials and financial returns for medical professionals who understood how to leverage research expertise and institutional relationships for continued success. The foundation grants and educational funding that I had established through my pharmaceutical wealth would continue providing scholarship opportunities and research support for the next generation of family members pursuing medical careers, but only if the current generation demonstrated appropriate gratitude and family values that justified continued investment in their children's educational advancement and professional development. The infrastructure for generational success was established and operational, but access to these resources required maintaining family relationships and demonstrating respect for the elderly relative whose life's work had created these extraordinary opportunities for medical career advancement and financial security. But my family had no idea that the Christmas dinner they were planning to abandon would become the most expensive evening of their lives, and the elderly grandmother they were about to leave alone with her turkey and empty chairs controlled enough pharmaceutical wealth and medical research influence to determine whether their children attended college, whether their mortgages continued being supplemented, whether their prestigious medical positions remained secure, and whether their promising careers received the foundation support and industry connections that determine success in biotechnology and medical research, where family relationships and research funding often determined who achieved breakthrough. The Christmas gift that awaited them under my tree contained legal documents that would either confirm their continued access to my pharmaceutical fortune and medical research legacy, or transfer those resources to medical charities and research institutions that understood the value of scientific innovation and treated breakthrough medical research with the respect and gratitude that my own family had never demonstrated during 20 years of financial support that they had never acknowledged or appreciated because they assumed their success was entirely self-made rather than understanding that family wealth requires family loyalty and respect for the. Looking back now, with the clarity that comes from watching family members reveal their true character through their treatment of elderly relatives they consider financially irrelevant, I can see that my family's assumptions about my limited resources and dependence on their occasional visits weren't sudden judgments formed during our Christmas planning conversations. They were carefully calculated assessments based on their belief that retired grandmothers represented emotional obligations that successful medical professionals could manage through periodic family gatherings and holiday appearances without understanding what my family didn't know, and what they would discover in the most expensive way possible on Christmas morning, was that the modest colonial home in Brookfield, where I prepared traditional holiday meals and displayed family photographs, was actually the private headquarters of one of New England's most influential pharmaceutical development companies, whose research funding and medical innovation had generated breakthrough treatments that saved millions of lives, while creating the financial foundation that had elevated every member of our family to professional success they believed they had earned through individual merit and personal achievement. The comfortable living room where my family gathered for holiday celebrations, furnished with traditional pieces that reflected my preference for understated elegance rather than ostentatious wealth display, contained the same strategic planning capabilities that had coordinated pharmaceutical research programs worth hundreds of millions of dollars across multiple medical institutions and biotechnology companies. The family photos and medical school graduation pictures that covered my mantelpiece weren't just proud grandmother displays. They were visual documentation of career achievements that had been systematically supported through my pharmaceutical connections and research funding networks that most family members had never questioned or investigated. The kitchen where I prepared elaborate Christmas dinners for ungrateful relatives was equipped with secure communication systems that allowed me to coordinate with pharmaceutical executives, medical researchers, and FDA regulatory officials who managed drug approval processes and clinical trial authorizations that determined which breakthrough treatments reached patients and which promising medical innovations received the development funding necessary for successful commercialization. The dining room table where my family would soon abandon me had hosted strategic planning sessions with biotechnology investors and medical research directors who controlled funding allocation for cancer research, cardiovascular studies, and diabetes treatment programs that generated both medical breakthroughs and substantial licensing revenues. My home office, which appeared to be a simple retirement workspace with basic computer equipment and traditional furniture, actually contained the sophisticated information systems and communication networks that managed a pharmaceutical portfolio generating over $180 million annually in research licensing fees, drug development royalties, and medical device patent revenues. The filing systems that looked like typical elderly paperwork organization actually housed documentation for FDA approvals, international pharmaceutical licensing agreements, and medical research partnerships that represented 4 decades of systematic innovation and strategic relationship building in the most competitive and regulated industry in American healthcare. But beyond the physical infrastructure that supported my pharmaceutical operations, what my family completely failed to understand was that my daily routine represented the same level of scientific expertise and industry influence that had earned Hartwell Biosciences recognition as one of America's most successful private pharmaceutical development companies, featured in medical journals and consulted by federal agencies seeking guidance on drug approval processes and medical research funding allocation that affected healthcare outcomes for millions of patients throughout the United States and internationally. My morning schedule that my family observed during their infrequent visits included reviewing clinical trial results from 14 different pharmaceutical research projects, analyzing market data from medical research databases that cost $75,000 annually to access, and coordinating with principal investigators who supervised drug development programs at Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins University, Stanford Medical Center, and Mayo Clinic research facilities that employed over 800 medical researchers and provided breakthrough treatments for cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and neurological disorders that had transformed. The phone conversations that my family heard me conducting during holiday gatherings weren't just social calls with elderly friends. They were strategic consultations with pharmaceutical attorneys who specialized in FDA regulatory compliance, biostatisticians who analyzed clinical trial data for drug safety and efficacy determinations, and medical research coordinators who managed multi-million-dollar research programs that required coordination between university medical schools, government research agencies, and private pharmaceutical companies that developed the medications and medical devices that modern healthcare systems depend on. The traditional grandmother activities that my family witnessed during their visits were actually advanced pharmaceutical management techniques that I demonstrated through the Hartwell Institute for Medical Research Excellence, our exclusive training program that prepared medical researchers and pharmaceutical executives for leadership positions in drug development companies, medical device manufacturers, and biotechnology firms that required sophisticated understanding of FDA regulations, clinical trial management, and medical research coordination that determined which treatments received approval and which promising innovations failed to reach patients due to inadequate. The Hartwell Institute was perhaps the most prestigious pharmaceutical training program in North America, accepting only 12 participants annually through an application process more competitive than medical school admissions and requiring extensive experience in medical research, pharmaceutical development, or biotechnology management before candidates qualified for consideration. Our program alumni included chief medical officers at major pharmaceutical companies, FDA review board members, medical research directors at prestigious universities, and biotechnology executives who managed drug development programs worth billions of dollars and affected healthcare outcomes for millions of patients worldwide. Students paid $120,000 for our intensive 8-month program, which included hands-on training in pharmaceutical development, internships at our research facilities, and personal mentorship from me and our network of medical professionals who managed pharmaceutical companies, medical device manufacturers, and biotechnology firms that developed breakthrough treatments for cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurological disorders, and infectious diseases that represented the most challenging medical conditions affecting global health outcomes and patient survival. The waiting list for admission to the Hartwell Institute extended over 3 years, and we regularly declined applications from pharmaceutical executives at Fortune 500 companies who didn't meet our standards for scientific expertise, regulatory knowledge, and commitment to patient-focused medical research that distinguished our approach from profit-driven drug development that prioritized marketing potential over therapeutic effectiveness and patient safety considerations that should guide responsible pharmaceutical innovation and medical device development. What made our program unique wasn't just the training quality, it was the industry connections and career advancement opportunities that came with graduation from the most respected pharmaceutical education program in American medical research. Hartwell Institute graduates had automatic access to executive positions at pharmaceutical companies that never advertised openings, received personal recommendations from FDA officials and medical research directors, and could leverage our network of alumni and professional partners to build careers that would be impossible to achieve through traditional pharmaceutical education and industry networking that didn't provide access to the highest levels of medical research funding and drug development decision-making. My family's medical careers, which they considered the result of personal achievement and professional competence, were actually dependent on relationships with pharmaceutical companies and medical research institutions that existed because of exclusive partnerships and funding arrangements that I controlled through strategic investments and research collaborations that had taken decades to establish through consistent excellence in drug development and medical innovation that served patient communities while generating the financial returns necessary for continued research funding and medical breakthrough development. Jennifer's biotechnology company, Cambridge Biotech, where she earned $350,000 annually as vice president of clinical development and received stock options potentially worth millions of dollars, was actually a strategic partner in 3 of our most successful pharmaceutical development programs, including breakthrough cancer treatments and cardiovascular medications that had generated over $400 million in combined licensing revenues, while establishing Cambridge Biotech as a leader in specialized drug development that required sophisticated regulatory expertise. And the partnership between Cambridge Biotech and Hartwell Biosciences had been established through my personal relationships with the company's founders and board members, providing them with access to FDA regulatory expertise and clinical trial coordination that would have been impossible to develop independently through conventional pharmaceutical industry networking and business development strategies. Jennifer's executive position and rapid career advancement reflected not only her scientific competence but also the institutional trust and pharmaceutical expertise that my reputation provided to biotechnology companies seeking strategic guidance and development partnerships. Michael's surgical practice at Boston Medical Center, generating over $500,000 annually in specialist fees and providing him with national recognition as an innovative cardiovascular surgeon, was supported through medical research grants and equipment donations that I had coordinated through our foundation's hospital partnership programs. The surgical equipment that enabled Michael to perform complex procedures and achieve superior patient outcomes had been funded through grants that I had directed to Boston Medical Center, based on their commitment to advancing cardiovascular surgery techniques and training programs that benefited both patients and medical professionals who specialized in cardiac care and surgical innovation. The cardiac surgery research programs that had established Michael's reputation as a leading cardiovascular specialist were funded through Hartwell Foundation grants that provided hospitals and medical schools with resources necessary for breakthrough surgical technique development and medical device innovation that improved patient survival rates while advancing medical knowledge and surgical training that prepared the next generation of cardiac surgeons for increasingly complex procedures and challenging patient cases that required exceptional surgical skill and advanced medical technology. David's position as Chief of Cardiology at Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical appointments in American healthcare, had been supported through research funding and equipment donations that demonstrated our family's commitment to advancing cardiac care and medical education at institutions that maintained the highest standards for patient treatment and medical innovation. The cardiac research programs that David supervised were funded through grants that I had established to promote innovative treatment approaches and medical device development that could transform cardiac care and improve patient outcomes for the thousands of heart disease patients who required specialized medical treatment and surgical intervention. The National Institutes of Health research grant that David had received for innovative cardiac surgery techniques, $2.8 million in federal funding that would establish his reputation as a leading medical researcher and provide credentials necessary for academic medical appointments at major universities, had been supported through my relationships with NIH review committees and federal medical research administrators who understood my expertise in pharmaceutical development and clinical research methodology that could ensure successful project completion and meaningful medical breakthroughs. But beyond the direct career benefits that my pharmaceutical success had provided to individual family members, what made their Christmas abandonment particularly devastating was their complete failure to understand the systematic nature of their dependence on my medical research network for continued professional advancement and financial security. They had never questioned why their career trajectories had been consistently smooth, why educational opportunities had always been available, why research funding had materialized whenever needed, or why their professional reputations had developed so remarkably compared to colleagues with similar qualifications and experience levels, who lacked family connections to pharmaceutical industry leaders and medical research funding sources. The medical research ecosystem that I had created through Hartwell Biosciences extended far beyond our immediate family to encompass hundreds of medical professionals, research institutions, and healthcare organizations throughout New England and beyond. Our pharmaceutical development programs had created employment opportunities for medical researchers, clinical trial coordinators, regulatory affairs specialists, and biotechnology executives who understood that their career success was connected to the continued strength and growth of our research network and pharmaceutical innovation programs that required sustained funding and strategic leadership to maintain excellence in medical research and drug development. Our research partnerships with Harvard Medical School, MIT, Yale University School of Medicine, Tufts University School of Medicine, and Boston University School of Medicine had generated breakthrough treatments and medical innovations that enhanced the reputation and research capabilities of these prestigious institutions, while providing educational opportunities and research experience for thousands of medical students, residents, and fellows who gained credentials and professional recognition that would benefit their careers throughout their professional lives in medicine, medical research. The diabetes research programs that had established my initial pharmaceutical reputation and generated billions in licensing revenues had created a network of endocrinologists, medical researchers, and diabetes care specialists who understood that their ability to provide cutting-edge treatment for diabetic patients depended on continued research funding and pharmaceutical innovation that required sustained investment in medical research and drug development programs that could adapt to changing patient needs and advancing medical technology that improved treatment outcomes and patient quality of life. My cancer research initiatives, conducted through partnerships with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and MD Anderson Cancer Center, had funded the development of innovative chemotherapy protocols and targeted cancer therapies that reduced treatment side effects while improving patient survival rates for multiple types of cancer that had previously been considered terminal diagnoses. These research programs had provided career-making opportunities for oncologists, medical researchers, and cancer care specialists who gained experience with experimental treatments and breakthrough medical technologies that established their expertise in cancer treatment and positioned them for leadership roles in oncology departments and cancer research facilities throughout the United States and international medical communities. The cardiovascular research programs that I had funded through Massachusetts General Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Cleveland Clinic, and Mayo Clinic had produced breakthrough treatments for heart disease, innovative surgical techniques for cardiac repair, and medical devices that improved patient outcomes for cardiovascular conditions that affected millions of Americans and required sophisticated medical intervention and ongoing care management that combined pharmaceutical treatment with surgical procedures and lifestyle modification programs that required coordination between multiple medical specialties and healthcare providers. But the most significant aspect of my pharmaceutical empire's influence was its role in determining which medical innovations received development funding and regulatory approval, which research institutions gained access to cutting-edge medical technology, and which medical professionals received opportunities for career advancement and professional recognition that distinguished successful healthcare careers from routine medical practice that lacked access to breakthrough treatments and advanced medical research opportunities that required substantial financial investment and regulatory expertise to achieve successful clinical implementation. My relationships with FDA officials and regulatory review committees provided pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers with strategic guidance about drug approval processes and clinical trial requirements that could mean the difference between successful product development and regulatory rejection that ended promising medical innovations before they reached patients who could benefit from improved treatment options and healthcare outcomes. The regulatory expertise that I had developed through 4 decades of pharmaceutical development provided medical researchers and biotechnology companies with competitive advantages that determined which treatments received approval and which innovations failed to navigate the complex regulatory environment that governed medical research and drug development in the United States healthcare system. The clinical trial coordination networks that I had established through university medical schools and research hospitals provided pharmaceutical companies with access to patient populations and medical expertise necessary for drug safety and efficacy testing that was required for FDA approval and commercial distribution of new medications and medical devices. These research networks represented relationships with thousands of medical professionals who understood that their ability to offer patients access to experimental treatments and breakthrough medical technologies depended on continued research funding and pharmaceutical development programs that required sustained investment and strategic coordination between medical institutions and drug development companies. The international pharmaceutical licensing agreements that I had negotiated with European and Asian drug manufacturers had created global distribution networks for American medical innovations while providing licensing revenues that funded continued research and development programs that maintained American leadership in pharmaceutical innovation and medical technology development. These international partnerships represented relationships with government health agencies and medical research institutions worldwide that recognized American pharmaceutical expertise and sought access to breakthrough treatments and medical technologies that could improve healthcare outcomes for their patient populations. The medical equipment and technology donations that I had provided to hospitals and medical schools throughout New England had created institutional relationships and professional goodwill that benefited every family member who pursued medical careers or biotechnology positions in healthcare organizations that valued research partnerships and educational funding support. Hospital administrators and medical school deans understood that our family represented access to pharmaceutical industry expertise and research funding that could provide competitive advantages in securing federal grants, clinical trial opportunities, and equipment donations that determined which medical institutions thrived and which struggled with limited resources and outdated technology that affected their ability to provide cutting-edge patient care and medical education. But my family had no idea that their comfortable professional lives and financial security were entirely dependent on my continued goodwill and the systematic support network that I had built through pharmaceutical success and medical research innovation. They assumed that their achievements were self-made and their career trajectories were the natural result of personal merit rather than understanding that their remarkable success patterns reflected the kind of institutional support and professional advocacy that required family loyalty and gratitude, rather than taking for granted the opportunities and advantages that had distinguished their medical careers from other healthcare professionals who lacked similar family connections and research funding access. The foundation grants and scholarship programs that I had established through my pharmaceutical wealth would continue providing educational opportunities and research support for future generations of family members pursuing medical careers, but only if the current generation demonstrated appropriate appreciation and family values that justified continued investment in their children's educational advancement and professional development. The infrastructure for generational medical career success was established and operational, but access to these resources required maintaining family relationships and demonstrating respect for the elderly relative whose life's work had created these extraordinary opportunities for medical education and healthcare career advancement. The Christmas dinner that my family was planning to abandon represented their final opportunity to demonstrate that they understood the value of family relationships and the importance of honoring elderly relatives whose pharmaceutical success had made their comfortable lives possible. The legal documents that waited under my Christmas tree would either confirm their continued access to my medical research network and pharmaceutical fortune, or transfer those resources to medical charities and research institutions that understood the value of scientific innovation and treated breakthrough medical research with the respect and gratitude that my own family had never demonstrated during 2 decades of financial support and career advancement, that they had always assumed was their natural birthright, rather than the result of systematic pharmaceutical success and medical research excellence that required family appreciation and continued loyalty to justice. The modest grandmother who would be left alone at Christmas dinner controlled enough pharmaceutical wealth and medical research influence to determine whether their children received medical school scholarships, whether their research grants continued, whether their hospital appointments remained secure, and whether their prestigious medical careers received the institutional support and industry connections that determine success in biotechnology and medical research, where family relationships and research funding often meant the difference between breakthrough discoveries and professional obscurity in competitive healthcare markets that demanded both scientific excellence and strategic institutional relationships for success. The first clear indication that my family viewed my Christmas hosting as an elderly obligation rather than a privilege to celebrate with the pharmaceutical innovator who had funded their medical careers came during our Thanksgiving gathering in November 2023, just 1 month before the Christmas abandonment that would cost them everything they thought they had earned through personal merit and professional achievement. What initially seemed like natural family coordination and holiday planning gradually revealed itself as systematic evaluation of my emotional needs and time requirements that my successful children and grandchildren could minimize through efficient family management and strategic obligation fulfillment. My daughter Jennifer, who had built her $350,000 biotechnology career on research partnerships and industry connections that she believed represented her own scientific achievement, approached our holiday planning with the analytical methodology of someone managing competing priorities rather than celebrating family relationships, and expressing gratitude for the educational opportunities and career advancement that had elevated her from struggling graduate student to biotechnology executive in one of New England's most competitive medical research markets. "Mom, we need to coordinate Christmas scheduling to make sure everyone can participate efficiently," Jennifer announced during our Thanksgiving dinner, producing a tablet computer loaded with calendar applications and family scheduling software that treated our holiday celebration like a corporate meeting requiring optimization and time management rather than understanding that Christmas dinner represented cultural tradition and family bonding that required patience and personal investment, rather than efficient coordination and streamlined family interaction. But instead of approaching our Christmas planning with the respectful appreciation of someone whose medical career had been systematically supported through pharmaceutical industry connections and research funding, Jennifer analyzed our holiday traditions with the cost-benefit evaluation methods of someone determining optimal resource allocation, rather than recognizing that family celebrations represented opportunities to honor elderly relatives whose life's work had created the financial foundation for her comfortable professional life and biotechnology career advancement. I'm thinking we could streamline the dinner preparation and maybe adjust some of the traditional elements to accommodate everyone's schedule constraints. Jennifer continued while reviewing her calendar and making notes about family availability that treated Christmas dinner attendance like a professional obligation rather than understanding that holiday celebrations required family commitment and personal sacrifice that demonstrated appreciation for elderly relatives who had invested decades in creating opportunities for younger generations' success and professional advancement. The symposium includes presentations on innovative cardiac surgery techniques and medical device development that could really enhance my understanding of emerging treatments and provide networking opportunities with leading cardiovascular researchers, David explained, while reviewing professional development materials and making notes about career advancement activities that took priority over family celebration planning and traditional holiday participation. But David's focus on professional networking during Christmas celebrations demonstrated his complete failure to understand that his cardiovascular surgery expertise and medical research opportunities existed because of institutional relationships and research funding that I had coordinated through pharmaceutical industry connections and medical education support that had created the career advantages he considered evidence of personal achievement and exceptional medical competence, rather than systematic family support and strategic career advocacy. My granddaughter Sarah, whose acceptance into MIT's bioengineering program had been facilitated through my endowment contributions and university relationships that she believed reflected her academic excellence and scientific potential, contributed to Christmas planning with suggestions that revealed her assumption that family celebrations should accommodate college schedules and social activities, rather than prioritizing respect for elderly relatives and traditional family values that required personal sacrifice and emotional commitment from younger generations who had benefited from family educational funding and career preparation. I'm really hoping we can work around my winter break plans, Sarah mentioned while coordinating with college friends about vacation travel and social activities that competed with family obligations for her time and attention during holiday periods. Some of my MIT classmates are planning a biotech industry tour in California that could provide valuable career preparation and networking opportunities with biotechnology companies and research organizations. Sarah's suggestion that family Christmas celebrations should work around her college vacation plans revealed her assumption that elderly relatives should adapt family traditions to accommodate younger generations' social activities and career preparation, rather than understanding that holiday celebrations represented opportunities for college students to demonstrate appreciation for the elderly relatives whose educational funding and university connections had made their prestigious academic opportunities possible through systematic family investment and strategic educational planning. The California Biotech Tour includes visits to pharmaceutical companies and research facilities that could really help me understand career opportunities in biotechnology and medical device development, Sarah explained while reviewing college materials and making notes about career preparation activities that took priority over family celebration planning and traditional holiday participation with elderly relatives who had funded her education and created her academic opportunities. But Sarah's focus on career preparation activities during Christmas celebrations demonstrated her complete failure to understand that her MIT education and bioengineering opportunities existed because of university relationships and educational funding that I had provided through pharmaceutical industry success and strategic educational investment that had created the academic advantages she considered evidence of personal merit and exceptional scientific potential, rather than family financial support and educational advocacy that most college students never received. My grandson Thomas, whose pharmaceutical industry internship and current $150,000 position as clinical research coordinator had been arranged through my professional relationships and industry connections that he attributed to his academic achievement and professional competence, approached Christmas planning with assumptions that revealed his belief that family gatherings represented routine social obligations rather than meaningful celebrations that honored elderly relatives and traditional values that required personal investment and emotional commitment from successful young professionals. I'm hoping Christmas dinner won't conflict with some year-end pharmaceutical industry networking events, Thomas mentioned while reviewing professional development opportunities and career advancement activities that apparently competed with family obligations for his time and attention during holiday periods. There are several biotech company parties and industry mixers that could provide valuable networking opportunities and career development contacts. Thomas's concern about Christmas dinner conflicting with professional networking revealed his assumption that family celebrations represented secondary priorities that should adapt to accommodate career advancement opportunities, rather than understanding that holiday traditions required family commitment and personal sacrifice, that demonstrated gratitude for elderly relatives whose pharmaceutical industry connections had created the professional opportunities he considered evidence of individual achievement and exceptional career development. The industry networking events include meetings with pharmaceutical executives and research directors who could provide valuable career guidance and potential employment opportunities, Thomas explained while reviewing professional materials and making notes about career advancement activities that took priority over family celebration planning and traditional holiday participation with elderly relatives who had created his pharmaceutical industry connections. But Thomas's focus on pharmaceutical industry networking during Christmas celebrations revealed his complete failure to understand that his clinical research position and biotechnology career opportunities existed because of industry relationships and professional connections that I had provided through decades of pharmaceutical innovation and strategic career advocacy that had created the professional advantages he considered evidence of personal competence and exceptional career potential rather than family industry connections and systematic professional support. The pattern that emerged during our Christmas planning conversations revealed that my family had internalized their professional success and comfortable lifestyles as natural consequences of individual merit rather than understanding that their remarkable career trajectories reflected systematic family support and strategic advocacy that had created educational opportunities, professional connections, and financial advantages that distinguished their achievements from other medical professionals and biotechnology workers who lacked similar family resources and institutional relationships. Jennifer's biotechnology executive position, Michael's cardiovascular surgery practice, David's cardiology department leadership, Sarah's MIT education, and Thomas's pharmaceutical industry career all represented achievements that they considered evidence of personal competence and professional excellence rather than understanding that their success patterns reflected the kind of systematic support and strategic advocacy that required family loyalty and gratitude rather than treating elderly relatives like social obligations and inconvenient scheduling constraints. But the most revealing aspect of my family's approach to Christmas planning was their assumption that my holiday hosting represented elderly need for social interaction rather than understanding that family celebrations provided opportunities for successful children and grandchildren to demonstrate appreciation for the pharmaceutical innovator whose research funding and medical industry connections had created the foundation for their comfortable professional lives and financial security. They treated Christmas dinner planning like a charitable obligation rather than recognizing that holiday invitations from elderly relatives represented privileges that should be honored through personal sacrifice and emotional investment rather than efficient coordination and streamlined family interaction that minimized time requirements and scheduling conflicts with professional activities and career advancement opportunities. "We definitely want to make sure you have company for Christmas," Jennifer had said with the diplomatic sympathy of someone providing social services rather than expressing genuine appreciation for family relationships and traditional celebrations. "It's important that you don't spend the holidays alone, especially at your age when social interaction and family support become more important for emotional well-being and mental health." Jennifer's reference to social interaction being important at my age revealed her assumption that elderly relatives needed family visits for emotional support, rather than understanding that Christmas invitations represented opportunities for successful family members to honor the elderly relatives whose life's work had created their professional opportunities and financial advantages through pharmaceutical innovation and strategic investment in medical education and career development. "We know how much family gatherings mean to you," Michael had added with the patronizing kindness of someone accommodating elderly preferences, rather than demonstrating genuine respect for traditional values and family heritage. Holiday celebrations are really important for maintaining family connections and ensuring that older family members feel valued and included in family activities. Michael's suggestion that holiday celebrations were important for making quote, family members feel valued demonstrated his complete misunderstanding of family dynamics and generational respect, treating Christmas dinner like elderly entertainment rather than understanding that holiday traditions represented opportunities for younger generations to demonstrate gratitude for the elderly relatives whose achievements had made their comfortable lives possible. "Christmas dinner is always such a nice tradition," David had commented with polite enthusiasm that revealed his assumption that family celebrations represented cultural customs rather than meaningful opportunities for family bonding and respect demonstration. "It's good that we maintain these family traditions and make sure everyone feels included in holiday activities and seasonal celebrations." But David's reference to maintaining traditions revealed his fundamental failure to understand that Christmas celebrations weren't just cultural customs, but opportunities for family members to demonstrate appreciation for elderly relatives, whose pharmaceutical success and medical research innovation had created the educational opportunities and career advantages that had elevated the entire family's professional prospects and financial security. The planning conversations that my family conducted with apparent consideration and family concern actually revealed systematic assumptions about elderly obligations and professional priorities that treated Christmas hosting like social service, rather than understanding that holiday invitations represented privileges that required gratitude and respect for the elderly relatives whose life's work had created the opportunities and advantages that distinguished successful medical careers from routine healthcare employment. My family's approach to Christmas planning revealed that they viewed our holiday celebration as an elderly accommodation that successful professionals could manage through efficient scheduling and convenient participation, rather than understanding that family gatherings represented opportunities to honor the pharmaceutical innovator whose research funding and industry connections had made their remarkable career success possible through systematic support and strategic advocacy that most medical professionals never received. They had no idea that the elderly grandmother whose Christmas dinner they were treating like a scheduling obligation controlled the very pharmaceutical networks and medical research funding that determined their continued professional success and financial security. The woman whose holiday planning they approached with patronizing accommodation was actually documenting their assumptions and family priorities that would ultimately determine whether they continued enjoying the benefits of my pharmaceutical empire or learned what their professional lives would look like without the medical research funding and industry connections that had been supporting their careers since they were students. The Christmas dinner that they were planning to attend with efficient family obligation fulfillment would become the most expensive evening of their professional lives, and the elderly relative whose traditional holiday celebration they viewed as social accommodation controlled enough pharmaceutical wealth and medical industry influence to determine whether their children received educational funding, whether their research grants continued, whether their prestigious medical positions remained secure, and whether their comfortable lifestyles survived the systematic withdrawal of financial support and professional. But my family approached Christmas planning with the confident assumption that their professional achievements were self-made and their comfortable lifestyles were permanent, rather than understanding that their remarkable success patterns required continued family loyalty and respect for the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical innovation had created the foundation for every advantage and opportunity. They considered evidence of individual merit and personal achievement in competitive medical and biotechnology markets that demanded both scientific excellence and strategic institutional relationships for sustained career advancement. The first clear indication that my family's Christmas planning had evolved from efficient scheduling to complete dismissal of my holiday celebration came during our final coordination call on December 20th, 2023, just 4 days before Christmas Eve, when they would reveal their true character and face the most expensive consequences of their professional lives. What began as discussions about timing and coordination had gradually transformed into systematic minimization of family obligations and strategic avoidance of traditional holiday participation that revealed their fundamental assumption that elderly relatives represented inconvenient social requirements rather than the pharmaceutical innovator whose research funding and medical industry connections had made their comfortable lives possible. Mom, we've been thinking about Christmas arrangements and we're wondering if we might need to make some adjustments to accommodate everyone's schedule conflicts, Jennifer announced during our conference call, speaking with the diplomatic efficiency of someone delivering unwelcome news while attempting to minimize emotional impact and family disruption. It turns out that several family members have professional obligations and travel commitments that might interfere with traditional Christmas dinner participation. But Jennifer's reference to schedule conflicts and professional obligations revealed the systematic prioritization that had been developing throughout our holiday planning process, where successful medical professionals and biotechnology executives had gradually positioned their career activities and personal preferences as more important than family celebrations and respect for elderly relatives whose pharmaceutical success had created the foundation for their professional achievements and financial security. What kind of schedule conflicts are we talking about? I asked calmly, testing whether my family would acknowledge their changing priorities directly or continue using diplomatic language that obscured their fundamental lack of appreciation for the elderly relative, whose Christmas invitation represented an opportunity to demonstrate gratitude and family loyalty, rather than a social obligation requiring efficient management and convenient coordination. Well, Michael has some surgical coverage responsibilities that might extend through Christmas Day, Jennifer explained while obviously coordinating with other family members who were apparently listening to our conversation and preparing their own excuses for minimizing Christmas participation. And David has that cardiology conference that starts on December 26th, so he might need to travel early to handle preparation and networking activities. Jennifer's explanation revealed the systematic planning that had been occurring among family members who had collectively decided that their professional activities and career advancement opportunities took priority over Christmas celebrations, with the elderly relative, whose pharmaceutical empire had funded their medical educations, supported their career development, and created the institutional relationships that had made their prestigious positions possible through strategic advocacy and research funding that most medical professionals never received. Sarah also has that biotechnology tour in California that starts right after Christmas. Jennifer continued with obvious relief that she could distribute responsibility for Christmas avoidance among multiple family members rather than taking individual accountability for dismissing holiday traditions and family celebrations. And Thomas has some pharmaceutical industry events that could provide valuable networking opportunities for his career development. But the pattern that emerged from Jennifer's explanations revealed that my family had coordinated their Christmas avoidance through systematic excuse development and mutual support for prioritizing professional activities over family obligations. Treating our traditional holiday celebration like an elderly accommodation that successful family members could minimize through collective agreement, and shared responsibility for disappointing the grandmother whose pharmaceutical wealth had made their comfortable lifestyles possible. It sounds like everyone has found professional activities that conflict with Christmas dinner, I observed with growing clarity about my family's true priorities and their systematic approach to minimizing time investment in family relationships that they considered secondary to career advancement and personal convenience, rather than understanding that holiday celebrations represented opportunities to honor elderly relatives and traditional values. Tao's and traditional values. That would give everyone time for family celebration while maintaining schedule flexibility for professional commitments and travel arrangements. Michael agreed with obvious relief that Christmas participation could be minimized through collective agreement and systematic time limitation, rather than requiring the personal sacrifice and emotional investment that meaningful family celebrations typically demanded from successful professionals. But their systematic coordination of minimal Christmas participation revealed that my family had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of holiday celebrations and family relationships, treating traditional Christmas dinner like elderly entertainment, rather than understanding that holiday invitations represented opportunities for successful family members to demonstrate appreciation for the elderly relatives whose life work had created their professional opportunities and financial advantages. December 23rd arrived with last-minute coordination calls that revealed the systematic nature of my family's Christmas avoidance and their collective effort to minimize holiday participation while preserving the appearance of family consideration and traditional celebration respect. Each family member contacted me individually to confirm their modified participation and explain their scheduling constraints, but their explanations revealed careful coordination and mutual support for prioritizing professional activities over family celebrations. "Mom, I just wanted to confirm that Christmas brunch will work perfectly with my schedule," Jennifer called to announce, speaking with obvious relief that family obligations had been successfully minimized through collective agreement and systematic time limitation. "I'll be able to participate in family celebration and still handle some biotechnology industry coordination that's important for year-end planning and strategic development." Jennifer's confirmation call revealed her assumption that Christmas celebrations should accommodate professional schedules, rather than understanding that holiday traditions required personal sacrifice and time investment that demonstrated respect for elderly relatives and family heritage that couldn't be optimized through convenient coordination and strategic planning methods. "I'm really looking forward to Christmas brunch," Michael called to confirm, obviously pleased that family participation could be contained within specific time limits that wouldn't interfere with surgical scheduling and hospital obligations that he considered more important than extended family celebration and traditional holiday observance with elderly relatives. Michael's enthusiasm for time-limited Christmas participation revealed his systematic approach to family obligation management, treating elderly relatives like scheduled appointments, rather than understanding that meaningful holiday celebrations required emotional investment and personal commitment that demonstrated appreciation for the pharmaceutical innovator whose research funding had made his medical career possible. "Christmas brunch is going to work great with my travel schedule," David called to announce, obviously satisfied that family celebrations had been adjusted to accommodate his cardiology conference attendance and professional networking activities that took priority over traditional family gathering and holiday tradition participation with elderly relatives. David's satisfaction with modified Christmas arrangements revealed his assumption that family celebrations should adapt to professional schedules, rather than understanding that holiday traditions represented opportunities for successful medical professionals to demonstrate gratitude for elderly relatives whose pharmaceutical industry connections had created their career advancement opportunities and institutional relationships. "I'm so glad we worked out Christmas brunch instead of dinner," Sarah called to confirm, speaking with obvious relief that family obligations wouldn't interfere with her college vacation plans and biotechnology industry tour that apparently provided more valuable experiences than traditional holiday celebration with the elderly grandmother, whose educational funding had made her MIT opportunities possible. "We definitely don't want to abandon Christmas entirely," Michael interjected with obvious concern that their collective avoidance might appear disrespectful or ungrateful toward family traditions and elderly expectations. "We're thinking maybe we could do a quick family gathering earlier in the day, or perhaps coordinate a holiday celebration that works better with everyone's scheduling constraints and professional obligations." Michael's suggestion of a quick family gathering revealed his assumption that Christmas celebrations could be condensed and optimized to accommodate professional schedules, rather than understanding that meaningful holiday traditions required time investment and emotional commitment that demonstrated respect for elderly relatives and cultural heritage that couldn't be streamlined through efficient coordination and convenient timing adjustments. "What time frame were you thinking about for this modified celebration?" I asked, observing my family's systematic effort to minimize their Christmas participation, while maintaining the appearance of family consideration and holiday tradition respect that could preserve their self-image as caring relatives, rather than acknowledging their fundamental lack of appreciation for the elderly grandmother whose pharmaceutical success had created their professional opportunities. "Maybe we could do Christmas brunch instead of dinner?" David suggested with obvious enthusiasm for a solution that would allow family participation while minimizing time commitment and scheduling interference with professional activities and career advancement opportunities. That way, everyone could participate in family celebration while still maintaining flexibility for afternoon and evening obligations. David's suggestion of Christmas brunch revealed his assumption that holiday traditions were flexible accommodations that could be adjusted to serve professional convenience rather than understanding that Christmas dinner represented cultural heritage and family bonding that required personal sacrifice and time investment from successful family members who had benefited from elderly relatives' life work and financial support throughout their educational and career development. Christmas brunch would definitely work better with travel schedules and professional commitments. Sarah agreed with obvious relief that family celebrations could be minimized without completely abandoning holiday traditions and elderly accommodation that might appear ungrateful or disrespectful toward the grandmother whose educational funding had made her MIT opportunities possible. But Sarah's enthusiasm for minimizing Christmas participation revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of family priorities and generational respect, treating holiday celebrations like scheduling problems rather than meaningful opportunities to demonstrate appreciation for elderly relatives, whose pharmaceutical wealth and educational investment had created the academic and professional advantages that she considered evidence of personal merit and exceptional achievement. "I think Christmas brunch could work for everyone," Thomas added with obvious support for family arrangements that would minimize time commitment while preserving the appearance of holiday participation and family tradition respect. It would allow family celebration without interfering with afternoon and evening professional activities and networking opportunities. Thomas's agreement with modified Christmas arrangements revealed his systematic approach to balancing family obligations with career advancement priorities, treating elderly relatives like social requirements that could be managed through efficient coordination rather than understanding that holiday invitations represented privileges that required gratitude and respect for the pharmaceutical innovator whose industry connections had made his biotechnology career possible. The conference call continued with detailed coordination of their modified Christmas celebration, but what became increasingly clear was that my family had collectively decided that traditional Christmas dinner represented an excessive time commitment that interfered with their professional activities and personal preferences rather than understanding that holiday celebrations provided opportunities to honor the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical empire had been systematically supporting their comfortable lifestyles and career advancement for over 20 years. "So we're thinking Christmas brunch from maybe 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. would work well for everyone," Jennifer summarized with obvious satisfaction that family obligations could be contained within a specific time frame that wouldn't interfere with afternoon and evening activities that apparently took priority over extended family celebration and traditional holiday observance. Sarah's relief about modified Christmas arrangements revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of family priorities and educational appreciation. Treating elderly relatives like scheduling constraints rather than understanding that holiday celebrations represented opportunities to honor the pharmaceutical innovator, whose university connections and educational investment had created her academic advantages and professional preparation. Christmas brunch is definitely going to work better for everyone, Thomas called to confirm, obviously pleased that family celebrations could be minimized while preserving professional networking opportunities and pharmaceutical industry activities that he considered more important than traditional holiday participation and family relationship maintenance with elderly relatives. Thomas's satisfaction with time-limited Christmas participation revealed his systematic prioritization of career advancement over family loyalty, treating elderly relatives like social obligations rather than understanding that holiday invitations represented privileges that required gratitude for the pharmaceutical industry connections that had made his biotechnology career and professional success possible. But the most revealing aspect of their individual confirmation calls was the obvious coordination and mutual support that had occurred among family members who had collectively agreed that traditional Christmas dinner represented excessive time commitment that interfered with their professional activities and personal preferences, rather than understanding that holiday celebrations provided opportunities to demonstrate appreciation for the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical wealth had been supporting their comfortable lifestyles for decades. Christmas Eve morning arrived with final coordination messages that revealed the systematic nature of my family's approach to minimal holiday participation and their collective effort to manage family obligations through efficient scheduling and convenient timing that preserved their professional priorities while maintaining the appearance of family consideration and traditional celebration respect. Looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow morning for Christmas brunch. Jennifer texted with obvious enthusiasm for family celebrations that had been successfully contained within specific time limits and wouldn't interfere with her biotechnology industry activities and year-end professional coordination that apparently took priority over extended family time and traditional holiday observance. Christmas brunch is going to be perfect timing for everyone, Michael texted with obvious satisfaction that family obligations could be managed through systematic coordination rather than requiring the personal sacrifice and emotional investment that meaningful family celebrations typically demanded from successful medical professionals, who had benefited from elderly relatives' pharmaceutical success and career support. Ready for Christmas brunch and then travel preparations. David texted with obvious excitement about his cardiology conference attendance and professional networking opportunities that provided more value than extended family celebration and traditional holiday participation with the elderly relative whose medical research funding had made his prestigious hospital position possible. Can't wait for Christmas brunch before my California trip. Sarah texted with obvious anticipation about her biotechnology industry tour and college vacation activities that offered more educational value than traditional family gathering and holiday celebration with the pharmaceutical innovator whose university connections had created her academic opportunities and professional preparation. Christmas brunch and then pharmaceutical networking events. Thomas texted with obvious enthusiasm for professional activities and career advancement opportunities that provided more value than extended family celebration and traditional holiday observance, with the elderly relative whose industry connections had made his biotechnology career and professional success possible. But Christmas morning, December 25, 2023, brought the final revelation of my family's true character and their systematic approach to elderly accommodation that would trigger the most expensive consequences of their professional lives. Instead of arriving for Christmas brunch as coordinated, I received a series of text messages that revealed their ultimate dismissal of family obligations and complete lack of respect for the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical empire had made their comfortable lives possible. Mom, I'm so sorry, but an urgent biotechnology situation came up that requires immediate attention, Jennifer texted at 9:30 a.m., just 90 minutes before their scheduled Christmas brunch arrival. I'm going to have to miss Christmas brunch to handle this professional emergency that can't be postponed until after the holidays. Jennifer's urgent biotechnology situation represented the final step in her systematic Christmas avoidance, using professional emergency language to justify abandoning family celebrations while preserving her self-image as a dedicated biotechnology executive, rather than acknowledging that she was choosing career activities over family relationships and traditional holiday observance with elderly relatives. "Really sorry, Mom, but emergency surgical coverage required at hospital," Michael texted at 9:45 a.m., obviously coordinating with other family members to ensure that their collective Christmas abandonment appeared to result from unavoidable professional obligations rather than systematic family avoidance and deliberate dismissal of elderly relatives and traditional celebrations. Michael's emergency surgical coverage provided convenient justification for Christmas abandonment while maintaining his professional reputation and avoiding direct accountability for choosing hospital obligations over family celebration and traditional holiday participation with the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical wealth had funded his medical education and career development. "Unexpected cardiology emergency, can't make Christmas brunch," David texted at 9:50 a.m. using medical emergency language to justify his Christmas abandonment, while preserving his self-image as a dedicated cardiovascular specialist, rather than acknowledging that he was prioritizing professional activities over family relationships and holiday traditions. David's cardiology emergency represented systematic excuse coordination with other family members who had collectively decided that Christmas abandonment could be justified through professional obligation language, rather than acknowledging their fundamental lack of appreciation for elderly relatives and traditional family celebrations. "California flight moved up. Leaving now, sorry to miss brunch," Sarah texted at 10 a.m., using travel coordination language to justify her Christmas abandonment while maintaining her self-image as a dedicated student, pursuing valuable educational opportunities, rather than acknowledging that she was choosing college vacation activities over family relationships and holiday celebration. Sarah's flight schedule change provided convenient justification for Christmas abandonment while avoiding direct accountability for choosing biotechnology tour activities over traditional family gathering and holiday celebration with the pharmaceutical innovator whose educational funding had made her MIT opportunities possible. Pharmaceutical conference emergency session, can't make Christmas. Thomas texted at 10:15 a.m., using professional development language to justify his Christmas abandonment while preserving his self-image as a dedicated biotechnology professional, rather than acknowledging that he was choosing career networking over family relationships and traditional holiday observance. Thomas's conference emergency represented the final element in their coordinated Christmas abandonment, ensuring that every family member had professional justification for avoiding family celebration while maintaining their collective self-image as successful professionals with unavoidable obligations, rather than acknowledging their systematic dismissal of elderly relatives and traditional values. By 10:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, 30 minutes before their scheduled arrival time, every family member had abandoned Christmas brunch through coordinated professional excuses that revealed their systematic planning and mutual support for avoiding family obligations and traditional holiday celebration with the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical empire had been supporting their comfortable lifestyles and career advancement for over 20 years. I sat alone in my dining room, surrounded by Christmas decorations and traditional holiday preparations that represented cultural heritage and family values that my successful children and grandchildren had systematically dismissed through efficient coordination and professional excuse development. The Christmas brunch that I had prepared for ungrateful family members who considered elderly accommodation less important than career advancement would remain untouched, while I opened the Christmas gift that would change everything for the medical professionals who had just revealed their true character and fundamental lack of appreciation for family relationships. The gift that waited under my Christmas tree contained legal documents that had been prepared months earlier as contingency planning for exactly this scenario: systematic family abandonment and complete dismissal of the elderly relative whose pharmaceutical wealth had made their professional success possible. The envelope contained revised foundation bylaws, updated scholarship criteria, modified research grant allocation procedures, and strategic partnership termination notices that would systematically eliminate every financial benefit and professional advantage that my family had been receiving through Hartwell Biosciences' success and medical research funding networks. But the legal documents represented only the beginning of consequences that would teach my ungrateful family the true cost of treating elderly relatives like social obligations, and dismissing traditional family values for professional convenience and career advancement priorities. The systematic destruction of their comfortable lifestyles would demonstrate that pharmaceutical wealth required family loyalty and respect for elderly relatives whose life work had created opportunities and advantages that successful medical professionals could lose as quickly as they had been gained through strategic support and institutional advocacy. The first phone call I made on Christmas morning was to Patricia Chen, Director of Financial Aid at MIT, informing her that the Hartwell Educational Foundation would be terminating all scholarship support for family members effective immediately, including Sarah's tuition assistance and research funding that had made her bioengineering program affordable and academically successful. Sarah's MIT education, which she considered evidence of personal academic achievement, would become financially impossible without family educational funding that represented over $180,000 annually in tuition, housing, and research support. The second call was to Dr. Richard Morrison, Dean of Harvard Medical School, explaining that Hartwell Foundation research grants supporting family members' educational and career development would be redirected to medical students and researchers who demonstrated appropriate appreciation for educational opportunities and respect for the elderly philanthropists whose life work made medical education advancement possible. The research opportunities and academic recognition that had distinguished my family members' medical careers would be transferred to other medical professionals who understood the value of educational support and traditional family relationships. The third call was to James Patterson, Chief Executive Officer of Cambridge Biotech, informing him that Hartwell Biosciences would be terminating all research partnerships and strategic collaborations that had generated over $400 million in licensing revenues, while creating the institutional relationships that had made Jennifer's executive position and biotechnology career advancement possible. Jennifer's $350,000 salary and stock options would disappear when Cambridge Biotech lost the pharmaceutical partnerships and research funding that had justified her executive compensation and professional recognition. The fourth call was to Dr. Susan Walsh, Chief of Staff at Boston Medical Center, explaining that Hartwell Foundation equipment donations and research grants supporting cardiovascular surgery programs would be redirected to medical institutions that demonstrated appropriate appreciation for philanthropic support and respect for elderly donors whose pharmaceutical wealth made medical equipment advancement and surgical innovation possible. Michael's surgical practice and hospital privileges would be affected when the medical equipment and research funding that had enhanced his professional capabilities and patient outcomes were withdrawn from Boston Medical Center. The fifth call was to Dr. Andrew Thompson, hospital administrator at Massachusetts General Hospital, informing him that Hartwell Foundation research grants and equipment donations supporting cardiology departments would be terminated immediately due to family member behavior that violated the Foundation's standards for professional ethics and respect for elderly philanthropists. David's chief of cardiology position and research opportunities would be compromised when the hospital lost research funding and equipment support that had made his cardiovascular programs and professional recognition possible. The sixth call was to Michael Roberts, Human Resources Director at the pharmaceutical company where Thomas worked as Clinical Research Coordinator, explaining that Hartwell Biosciences would be terminating all research collaborations and professional partnerships that had created Thomas's employment opportunities and career advancement in biotechnology and pharmaceutical development. Thomas's $150,000 position would be eliminated when his employer lost the research contracts and pharmaceutical partnerships that had justified his clinical research responsibilities and professional development. But the phone calls represented only the immediate consequences of their Christmas abandonment and systematic dismissal of family relationships and traditional values. The long-term destruction of their comfortable lifestyles would unfold over the following weeks and months, as they discovered the extent of their dependence on pharmaceutical wealth and medical research funding that they had never acknowledged or properly appreciated during 20 years of systematic family support and career advocacy. Within 48 hours of their Christmas abandonment, every family member began experiencing the financial and professional consequences of their systematic dismissal of elderly relatives and traditional family values. Sarah received notification from MIT Financial Aid that her scholarship support had been terminated effective immediately, requiring immediate payment of outstanding tuition balances and elimination of future educational funding that would make continued enrollment financially impossible for most families. Jennifer discovered that Cambridge Biotech was terminating her executive position due to loss of pharmaceutical partnerships and research funding that had justified her biotechnology career and executive compensation. Her $350,000 salary and stock options disappeared when the company lost revenue sources and strategic relationships that had existed solely because of Hartwell Biosciences' collaboration and research partnership agreements. Michael learned that Boston Medical Center was reviewing his surgical privileges and hospital affiliation due to elimination of research grants and equipment donations that had supported cardiovascular surgery programs and enhanced his professional capabilities. His $500,000 surgical practice faced immediate challenges when the hospital lost funding sources and medical equipment that had made his surgical success and patient outcomes possible. David received notification that Massachusetts General Hospital was restructuring cardiology departments due to termination of research grants and equipment funding that had supported his chief of cardiology position and cardiovascular research programs. His prestigious hospital appointment and research opportunities were compromised when the institution lost foundation support that had made his professional recognition and career advancement possible. Thomas discovered that his pharmaceutical company was eliminating his clinical research coordinator position due to loss of research contracts and collaboration agreements that had created his biotechnology career and professional development opportunities. His $150,000 salary and pharmaceutical industry advancement would disappear when his employer lost revenue sources and research partnerships that had existed through Hartwell Biosciences connections. The systematic elimination of financial support and professional advantages continued throughout January and February 2024, as my family discovered the extent of their dependence on pharmaceutical wealth and medical research networks that they had assumed were permanent aspects of their professional success, rather than understanding that their career advantages required family loyalty and respect for elderly relatives whose life work had created their opportunities and comfortable lifestyles. By March 2024, 3 months after their Christmas abandonment, my family's financial situation had deteriorated dramatically as they faced educational costs, mortgage payments, medical expenses, and lifestyle maintenance without the systematic support that had been providing over $800,000 annually in combined educational funding, professional advantages, research grants, and career development opportunities that had distinguished their success from other medical professionals and biotechnology workers. Sarah was forced to withdraw from MIT due to inability to afford tuition and educational expenses without family scholarship support, ending her bioengineering education and eliminating career preparation that she had considered evidence of personal academic achievement and scientific potential, rather than understanding that her educational opportunities had existed because of pharmaceutical wealth and university connections. Jennifer discovered that her biotechnology career was effectively ended when Cambridge Biotech's financial difficulties resulted in company reorganization and elimination of executive positions that had been justified through pharmaceutical partnerships and research revenue that no longer existed. Her professional reputation and industry connections were compromised when biotechnology companies understood that her executive experience had been dependent on family pharmaceutical relationships rather than individual competence and strategic expertise. Michael's cardiovascular surgery practice collapsed when Boston Medical Center eliminated surgical programs and reduced hospital privileges due to loss of research funding and medical equipment that had supported his professional capabilities and patient outcomes. His $500,000 annual income disappeared when the hospital could no longer justify specialized surgical services without foundation support and equipment donations that had made his surgical success possible. David lost his chief of cardiology position when Massachusetts General Hospital restructured cardiovascular departments due to elimination of research grants and equipment funding that had supported his professional recognition and hospital leadership. His medical career was effectively ended when other hospitals understood that his cardiology expertise and research opportunities had been dependent on family foundation support rather than individual medical competence and professional achievement. Thomas found himself unemployable in pharmaceutical and biotechnology industries when his previous employer's financial difficulties became known throughout medical research networks that understood his career advancement had been dependent on family connections rather than individual professional competence and pharmaceutical expertise. His biotechnology career and industry prospects disappeared when pharmaceutical companies avoided hiring candidates whose professional development had been compromised by family financial manipulation and elderly exploitation. By December 2024, 1 year after their Christmas abandonment, my family's complete financial collapse and professional destruction served as a cautionary tale throughout New England's medical and biotechnology communities about the consequences of exploiting elderly relatives and dismissing traditional family values for career advancement and professional convenience. Their story became required reading in medical ethics courses and pharmaceutical industry training programs that emphasized respect for elderly philanthropists and appreciation for educational funding that made medical career advancement possible. Today, 5 years after they abandoned me on Christmas morning, my family members work in service industry positions and struggle with basic financial obligations, while the Hartwell Educational Foundation continues providing scholarship support and research funding to medical students and biotechnology professionals who demonstrate appropriate appreciation for educational opportunities and respect for elderly philanthropists whose pharmaceutical wealth makes medical advancement possible. Sarah works as a retail sales associate at a shopping mall electronics store, earning minimum wage while struggling to repay student loans for the MIT education that she was unable to complete without family financial support. Her bioengineering career prospects disappeared when her academic record reflected incomplete education and financial difficulties that made her unsuitable for technical positions requiring educational credentials and professional reliability. Jennifer works as a medical office receptionist, earning $32,000 annually while handling appointment scheduling and patient communication for a small family practice clinic. Her biotechnology expertise and executive experience became worthless when her professional reputation was compromised by Cambridge Biotech's financial collapse and industry knowledge of her family financial manipulation and elderly exploitation that violated pharmaceutical industry ethics standards. Michael works as a medical equipment sales representative, earning commission-based income while selling basic medical supplies to small healthcare facilities that couldn't afford advanced surgical equipment and specialized medical technology. His cardiovascular surgery expertise became unemployable when medical institutions understood that his surgical success had been dependent on family foundation support, rather than individual medical competence and patient care excellence. David works as a medical insurance reviewer, earning $45,000 annually while processing claims and managing paperwork for a regional insurance company. His cardiology expertise and medical research experience became irrelevant when hospitals and medical institutions understood that his professional achievements had been dependent on family research funding rather than individual medical innovation and patient care excellence. Thomas works as a pharmaceutical warehouse coordinator, earning $38,000 annually while managing inventory and shipping for generic medication distribution. His clinical research experience and biotechnology knowledge became worthless when pharmaceutical companies understood that his career advancement had been dependent on family connections rather than individual research competence and professional pharmaceutical expertise. The modest colonial home in Brookfield, where they abandoned me on Christmas morning, continues serving as headquarters for Hartwell Biosciences, where our pharmaceutical research generates over $200 million annually in licensing revenues from breakthrough medications that serve millions of patients worldwide, while funding medical education and research opportunities for students and professionals who demonstrate appropriate appreciation for elderly philanthropists and traditional family values. The Hartwell Institute for Medical Research Excellence continues training 12 students annually in ethical pharmaceutical development and community-focused medical research, with graduates commanding executive positions at biotechnology companies throughout North America and Europe. The waiting list for admission extends over 4 years, and we regularly receive applications from medical professionals seeking master-level training in pharmaceutical innovation and research methodology that honors traditional values and elderly expertise rather than exploiting family relationships for career advancement. The pharmaceutical expertise and medical research networks that my family attempted to exploit through professional manipulation and elderly dismissal remain protected within our educational programs, shared only with medical students and research professionals who demonstrate genuine respect for elderly philanthropists and commitment to ethical medical development that serves patient communities rather than targeting opportunities for personal advancement at the expense of family relationships and traditional values that require preservation across generations. My dining room in Brookfield, where I spent Christmas morning alone while opening legal documents that destroyed my family's comfortable lifestyles, continues serving as the strategic planning center for someone whose pharmaceutical innovations have provided medical treatments for millions of patients, created educational opportunities for thousands of medical students, and maintained traditional family values through systematic support for young professionals who understand that medical career success requires respecting elderly relatives and honoring the pharmaceutical pioneers whose life work made modern medical advancement possible. Sometimes the most important lesson you can teach ungrateful family members is that pharmaceutical wealth and medical research funding aren't family entitlements available for exploitation and career advancement, but private resources that belong to elderly individuals who have earned the right to determine how their life's work benefits future generations based on demonstrated appreciation, family loyalty, and respect for traditional values that require personal sacrifice and emotional investment, rather than efficient coordination and professional convenience. My family learned that elderly relatives who appear to be social obligations requiring accommodation may actually control medical research empires worth hundreds of millions of dollars, possess the power to launch or destroy biotechnology careers, and maintain the pharmaceutical authority to determine whether young professionals deserve access to medical education funding or should be excluded from research opportunities entirely based on their treatment of elderly philanthropists and respect for traditional family values that distinguish successful medical careers from routine healthcare employment. The Christmas abandonment that seemed like an opportunity for my family to prioritize professional activities and career advancement became the most expensive lesson of their lives about the true cost of elderly exploitation, family dismissal, and professional arrogance toward women whose pharmaceutical expertise and medical research influence they couldn't even begin to comprehend or respect. What would you have done if your family abandoned you on Christmas morning, while assuming your financial support was permanent, and your pharmaceutical empire was family property available for career exploitation? Have you ever encountered family members who took your generosity for granted while treating you like a social obligation, rather than understanding that your success created their opportunities and advantages? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know if this story has inspired you to examine your own assumptions about elderly relatives and their potential influence over your career prospects, and the importance of treating family wealth with the respect and appreciation it deserves, regardless of how successful you believe your individual achievements have made you. And if you found this story of Christmas justice and family boundary protection resonating with you, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories of people who discovered that exploiting elderly relatives and dismissing traditional family values can result in consequences more expensive than they could ever imagine, and more comprehensive than justice usually provides in professional environments where reputation and relationships determine long-term career success. Remember, pharmaceutical wealth isn't family property available for career exploitation. It's private resources that belong to elderly individuals who have earned the right to determine how their life's work benefits future generations who understand that medical career success requires respecting those who built research empires through decades of scientific innovation, rather than assuming they're obligated to provide educational funding and professional advantages for family members whose comfortable lifestyles should be honored through personal sacrifice rather than efficient coordination. The Christmas dinner that my family abandoned continues providing satisfaction and independence for someone whose pharmaceutical innovations have created medical breakthroughs for millions of patients, while the entitled relatives who chose career networking over family celebration work retail and service positions, selling basic products to customers who understand that professional success must be earned through individual achievement rather than family manipulation that violates the traditional values and generational respect that determine who receives access to educational opportunities and career advancement in competitive medical markets that. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.